Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Non-Prophets. This show is brought to you by the Atheist Community of Austin. I'm your host, Jeff D. My co-hosts are Vic Farrow. Hi, Vic.
Hey.
And Mary McManamee.
Hello.
And our producer is Russell Glasser, who's out of town right now, and his lovely wife, Ginny, is handling the equipment today and doing a marvelous job. Thank you very much for your help. Today's opening music was Space Invader by the Pretenders, that I seem to recall has been used by Rush Limbaugh on his show.
What's up with that?
It doesn't seem like a band that would have anything discussed in reaction to their music being used by Rush Limbaugh, but I'm pretty sure I've heard there. We are broadcasting live on March 2, 2002. The Atheist Community of Austin is a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have week meetings Sunday mornings at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop at 307 West 5th Street here in Austin, Texas at 2:30 a.m. except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at 11 a.m. in the Longhorn Room of Fur's Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. Our next lecture will be on March 3. Amanda will be speaking about Austin area geology. That March 3 would be tomorrow, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
ACA board meetings take place right before our regular meeting on the second Sunday of each month. If you shop at Randall's, you can give them our nonprofit organization number, 5158, and have 1% of your purchase donated to the Atheist Community of Austin. The Godless Gamers meet every Monday night at 7 p.m. at my place. ACA Happy Hour is at Antonio's near Highway 35 and 183, again here in Austin, Texas, every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. If you get there and don't see anybody else around, hang out because folks trickle in as the night goes on. For more information, call our voicemail at area code 512-371-2911 or visit our website at www.atheist-community.org. Want to remind everyone also that we are broadcast by the Atheist Network at www.atheistnetwork.com, and if you log in while we're broadcasting live, you can interact with other listeners to the show in the chat room. Just click on the chat link. We go out live every Saturday from 2 to 3:30 Central Time.
Yeah.
Do the math. And now let's hand it over to Mary for some news.
Okay. Well, I'd like to go ahead and start with the lead story that has actually kind of been out of the news for a while. But as y'all will recall, I'm sure, before September 11th and before, actually, it wasn't much before the September 11th attacks, I'm sure you remember that the Taliban destroyed many Buddhist statues and historical monuments. And there's been a report issued by an archaeologist by the name of Paul Bucherer, who returned from Afghanistan after a detailed study of the site. And basically he just confirms that there is nothing left of the Bamayan Buddha statues. These statues were more than 2,000 years old. And he says that the two Buddha, the report, this is from the BBC News. The report states two Buddhas, the largest of which was 53 meters high, were demolished by Taliban explosives experts in February of 2001.
Yeah, I remember that story. There was video of them blowing the things, firing bazookas at them, and then dancing around.
Yeah.
You know, we're not Buddhists either, but that's art. You know, I would be just as appalled if somebody blew up the Sistine Chapel. Absolutely.
And I don't know how, what the details are of this, but the article mentions that they could rebuild the work, but it would take up to 4 years and cost an estimated $30 to $50 million.
And it still wouldn't be
the same. So I'm not quite sure even how they would begin to rebuild these statues when apparently all that's left is rubble.
Yeah. Well, archaeologists are actually pretty good at reconstructing stuff from rubble.
Yeah, that's true. That is what they do.
It would never look complete.
No.
Explosives have damaged portions of it beyond repair, but
they
could probably reassemble it to some recognizable.
Yeah.
Because I think in the end, their artillery fire did not affect the statue enough to do it. They actually had to put explosives directly to it to bring it down.
Yeah, Mr. Busherer, that's the archaeologist, he also visited the remains of the Kabul Museum, where the collections were largely destroyed by Taliban militants. And there's a quote here from him. He says, virtually the entire collection was reduced to a amount of 6 cubic meters of debris. So, it's just really disgusting that the Taliban or anybody would destroy art, as you say, Jeff. I mean, it's just, it's so senseless.
Religion has a long history of destroying stuff. The Christian church cannot say anything better because they spent years burning and pillaging and plundering and hell, they people. So
Yeah. Well, turning more now to local, well, rather national news. There's a story from yesterday. As you all are, I'm sure, aware, the Enron scandal has involved the Arthur Andersen accounting firm.
Yeah.
And I don't have an Enron story today, but I do have an Arthur Andersen story. An Arthur Andersen accounting firm has been ordered to pay $217 million to settle a Baptist Foundation case. And the details are this. In addition to the $217 million settlement, authorities recovered $220 million in assets from the bankrupt Baptist Foundation and $21 million from Jennings, Strauss & Salmon, a Phoenix law firm. Basically, what was going on is a so-called Ponzi scheme. And I have a book written by M. Allen Anderson called How Con Games Work. And in this book, it talks about a definition, if you will, of Ponzi scheme. And basically, a Ponzi operator offers a so-called investment opportunity and promises a high yield within a short period of time. Monies taken in are never put into the project as advertised or used pyramid style to pay earlier investors. Right. Original participants are paid the promised return amount and sometimes more to encourage them to tell their friends about the great deal they have received. Now, like Jeff was mentioning before we went on the air, there's a term called affinity. Affinity fraud? Affinity fraud is the term. That's where essentially, as Jeff was saying, you basically, let's say a Baptist and another Baptist, Baptist, and you tell your friend, hey, I'm a good Baptist, you're a good Baptist, let's go in on this together. Right. God will make sure that we make money, right? Or because I have the same religious views as you, you can trust me. Yeah, when they take that kind of approach, which is, I think I've heard of this scheme before, when it first surfaced. And that was clearly what this group was doing. They were a Baptist organization going to Baptists saying, trust us, we're other Baptists, and we would never lead you wrong. Right, and your money will be protected.
What excuse are they making when they actually lose their money? How did God not protect them? Right. What did they do wrong?
Unfortunately,
you don't hear about that.
Go into that.
Well, that's when the they weren't true Christians kicks in.
And here's the upshot of this particular case. Former Baptist Foundation officials allegedly ran, again, this vast Ponzi scheme in which 13,000 investors lost $590 million in the mid-90s. In the suspected scam, early investors were paid off not with real investment profits, but with new money collected from later investors who lost their money.
Good grief.
It's ridiculous. And I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of Arthur Andersen accounting firm in the news, not only with this story, but also Enron.
Wow. I mean, how many of these kinds of stories, this and sexual abuse and all the other nonsense that religious people are up to in the name of religion, how many of those stories do we have to have in our media before people realize that the claim that religion helps people to behave better finally gets discounted?
I don't think that you can overcome that. I think that if it was, you got one a day for 10 years, they'd still come up with an excuse as to why religion makes you a better person.
Because they'd say it's not religion that does it.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not true Christians who are doing this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's not just Christians. I mean, we're talking about the Taliban. We're talking about, any religion.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we get called that a couple of times is that we live in America, and in America, Christianity is the predominant religion.
Right. You're right. It's religion in general that fails to make people behave better. Okay, what do we got?
Well, turning to some news, this was out of the Australian, but the story is taking place in India. Hindu mobs set fire to houses and shops in a village near the western Gujarat state, putting to death at least 27 Muslims trapped inside, the latest mass murder in India's worst religious strife in a decade that has claimed more than 300 lives.
More well-behaved theists.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And to give you a little bit of background on this story, I went to another article from March 2nd. It's from Reuters, so if you can check it out. The headline is Religious Violence Rages, Indian Parliament Pleads for Peace. Or I should say, I'm sorry, Indian Prime Minister. The abbreviation PM is Prime Minister. In 1992, Hindu hardliners razed the 16th century mosque on the site, meaning the site of, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have...
You don't have the rest of the paragraph?
Right.
Oh.
It's essentially, they razed the site of a 16th century mosque. This happened in 1992.
Yeah.
And this triggered India's worst religious clashes since the subcontinent was divided in 1947. More than 3,000 people died across India in the 1992 riots. Muslims account for more than 12% of mainly Hindus, India's 1 billion population, making them one of the largest Islamic communities in the world. So, the fact that we're having these clashes now is quite disturbing, and I would, definitely in the upcoming weeks, I'll definitely be following this story more because I think mainstream CNN and other news organizations don't pay nearly enough attention to these types of stories. But, we kind of hear about them at a glance, but not really much of the depth.
Yeah. Well, that's them crazy non-Christian foreigners.
Right.
Well, you want to hear some more well-behaved religious people?
You finished, Mary?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vic.
Go ahead.
A young Sudanese woman was sentenced to death by stoning for an adulterous relationship that was instead given 75 lashes. Apparently, this is very merciful. It is unclear whether the 18-year-old was still pregnant at the time she was flogged, or had already given birth to the child of the alleged adulterous These are Albert Hines, a scholar of Islamic studies who lives in Berlin, said, according to his sources, the girl had the baby while in jail awaiting the outcome of her appeal.
Where did this happen?
This was in
actual
Sudan.
flogging?
Sudan?
The Sudan.
Okay.
Eric Reeves, a professor at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, disagreed. To my knowledge, he says, she was still pregnant. And he told BI. The same court that sentenced the girl to death acquitted the child's father. The woman had said that he had raped her. Under the Sharia, or the religious law, women should not be flogged while pregnant or recovering from childbirth. Apparently they don't read their own laws. Neither may be then scourged in public, according to Hopkins, who's a Red Cross representative in the Sudan. They are whipped in rooms set aside for this purpose. Ooh, isn't that special?
Boy, this show is a real downer so far.
I know, but I don't even know what to say about beating a woman who possibly has still been pregnant at the time.
And even if she hadn't been, it still would have been okay.
Would it have? Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to a positive note then.
No, please.
We talked about
the
week you weren't here, the Dr. Pepper cans.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We talked about the new Dr. Pepper cans and their logo with the Statue of Liberty and the words
One nation,
indivisible.
Right.
And we said that since they were catching a lot of flack from other people, that we should write them letters of support, which I did, and I received a reply. And it states, "Thank you for contacting Dr. Pepper /7up Incorporated. We appreciate the message of support for our new Dr. Pepper Patriotic cans. Your comments are appreciated as they provide valuable feedback. Given recent national events, patriotic packaging was designed to reflect our pride in this country's determination to stand together as one, strong and indivisible under any circumstances. The Statue of Liberty and Pledge of Allegiance were chosen as two of the greatest symbols to represent that feeling. We think we have a message that is resoundingly patriotic, a message that we are a united nation. We felt one nation, indivisible, best represented the message we were trying to get across.
Yay.
Yay. Again, we appreciate taking the time to share your opinion with us about this package. We have forwarded your comments for use when evaluating future packaging designs.
Yay.
So I'm in their books now.
Yay.
But that was it's from Consumer Relations. There's no name, actually. Just
That was a fine thing you did there, writing in to express your support.
If you have not sent a message to Dr. Pepper, do so.
Is that still ongoing? I haven't seen any of those. Are you?
Yeah, I'm still seeing
I have not seen a can yet.
You haven't?
No.
Next time you grab
one.
some.
Yeah, let me grab one.
And I want to at least have one in my collection.
Yeah.
Historical.
Right.
What else you got? Good news now.
Good news.
Yeah. Let's go on right.
Let's see. Here's good news.
Yeah?
The House of Lords is backing research on cloned embryo stem cells. The experts on cloned and surplus human embryos were approved. Experiments on cloned and surplus human embryos were approved yesterday, but yesterday being a few days ago.
Yeah, right.
By the House of Lords committee, which ruled that there was not enough ethical objections to outweigh the potential benefits to science and medicine. Yay!
And this, now wait a minute. So the ethical objections largely being religious, right?
Claims by pro-life and religious groups that scientific advances in research using stem cells grown from adults have made embryo experiments necessary were rejected by the committee. It also backed research on reprogramming humans with donor DNA to treat certain genetic diseases.
There's a question from one in the chat room. Where can you find the cans? You know where to find the documents?
You were the one who told us you saw.
Well, I saw them at work. I mean, we have them in the soda machine at work, but I've never seen them on the shelf.
I suppose that since they're a limited packing, they'll send them out in blocks as a regular shipment, and you'll have to keep searching the store you go to to see if they've got them.
Okay.
Yeah, so I haven't seen one yet. And I usually drink my Dr. Pepper out of a bottle. I'm not going to see one. All right. It also backed research of reprogramming human eggs with donor DNA to treat certain genetic diseases. This could one day lead to births of babies with 3 genetic parents.
Cool.
3 genetic parents. So you just extract DNA from one source and put it into an embryo. And then you have a baby with 3 genetic parents, which would be able to correct a genetic defect.
Right.
Do that. But this is in England, and so they've got the green light to continue research on stem cell, which will, of course, in the end, if America keeps its course on being paranoid of this kind of research, will give the Europeans a huge leap in the technology of in medical technology, which will, of course, they will profit from later at our expense.
We're getting ThinkFest Climber in the chat room is asking for contact information. Well, she's asking somebody else to contact Don Rhodes or Michelle Gadouche from the organization for her, and instead what I'm going to do is hand my Palm Pilot to Ginny and ask her to find those people on the list and type the phone numbers in for our esteemed colleague, so she can call those folks herself. Okay, are you done with news now?
Yeah. Okay,
here's what I got. First of all, just some general announcement kind of things. The Atheist Community of Austin did indeed join with communities from all over Austin as part of a national call for solidarity in the face of the FBI INS targeting of Muslim, Arab, and South Asian immigrants for arrest and or detention. Our thanks go out to Michelle Gadouche, Jeff Jones, and Martin Wagner for representing us at the event. They carried the ACA banner and other signs, wore their ACA t-shirts. Michelle reports that there were about 40 people in attendance, including Arab groups and Asian groups, mostly students, some Green Party people, and some people from the Muslim community. There was a rally at Republic Square here in Austin. A short speech was made, and a young man read a poem in Pakistani and then the English translation. Everyone received blue triangles with the name of a detainee. Michelle reports that she encountered no hostility toward us as atheists and felt that our presence there was welcomed. So,
Great.
It was a great thing.
A note on that: the Islamic community has every right to be up in arms. I've been reading a lot about the Patriot Act in the last couple of days, and there are about 1,100 people sitting in cells right now who have not been charged with anything. They're just sitting there because this new Patriot Act allows the federal government to just lock people up. It's sort of a preventative detention.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because of what you might do.
Because of what you might do or where you come from. If they want to deny that there is racial profiling in this, then they're just plain lying.
Now, that's unconstitutional.
It is.
Where is the challenge to the constitutionality of that coming from?
Apparently nowhere.
Nobody is raising that.
People are raising them. There is the ACLU has a write-up for it.
Yeah.
I was reading an article from the Center for Constitutional Rights, and they have a write-up about it. But as far as any political challenges, I'm not seeing it. It was railroaded through the House and Senate. The Senate voted except for one person. It was
Hey, Ginny?
98-1, I think.
That should be sent privately. If possible, right? Like as a whisper.
How do I do that?
Oh, you don't know now? Then ThinkFest is just going to have to wait. Okay. Speaking of ThinkFest Rock Climber, that is our own Manda who organized today's outing. Those of us who are interested in from the ACA are going to go to a place to do indoor rock climbing at 3:00, and if everybody's listening to us live, that's just a reminder to you. We'll be meeting over at our place again. The National Atheist Ombuds is a organization that distributes information on instances of slurs, discrimination, or discrimination against atheists or other non-believers in the U.S. media. I just sent them a link to a United Press International commentary column from a guy saying that the reason that Daniel Pearl was killed not by Muslims, because those weren't real Muslims, of course. He was killed by atheists. And he drew analogies between atheism and communism and Nazism, and it was just absolutely horrible. And it's not exactly the United States media, but I sent it to him anyway. What they do is they distribute that information to participating local and national non-theist organizations who in turn distribute press releases about that kind of stuff. Freethinkers and Atheists of Virginia is a new group forming in Virginia. More information can be found at www.atheistdominion.org. They meet at the Virginia Beach Central Library at 4100 Virginia Beach Boulevard between Independence Boulevard and Rosemont Road. The next meeting will be on March 17 from 1 to 3 p.m. in the auditorium of that building. You can now collect past episodes of the Non-Prophets and also the audio version of our sister show, The Atheist Experience, which airs on public access TV only in Austin, Texas, in convenient CD format. Each CD contains a full month's worth of audio from both shows in QuickTime and MP3 formats. The January CD and February CD are now available.
Yay!
And as a bonus, the January one includes audio from our Separation Church and State rally here in Austin. The February one has the audio from the lecture in February, which was Professor Romeridge talking about the Samson Agonistes poem. CDs are $5 each. For information, contact atheist@mac.com.
Oh, and I believe this February CD also has Russell's review of the the intelligent design debate.
That happened here at the University of Texas. Oh, cool. I hadn't heard that. Eat More Christians t-shirts are available from www.cafepress.com/nogods. Those are T-shirts with a parody of the Chick-fil-A advertising campaign. Chick-fil-A, of course, being a fundamentalist Christian fast food chain. Their ad campaign had 3 cows with billboards urging people to eat chicken. We have T-shirts with 3 lions urging people to eat crickets. There are also mugs, mouse pads, and all that kind of good stuff. Proceeds go toward the cost of running and promoting this fine program. And I just recently got a check. I need to get that money to some kind of fund, I guess. I don't know what to do with it now. We sold some, and the money's just sitting there. But we'll spend it on something to make this show better, or at least more widely known. Also, I need to announce the 8th Annual Atheist Alliance Convention International. I should have been talking about this for a long time, and it snuck up on me, and I feel bad. I mean, we talked about the Rationalist Conference in India for about a year, and this one is like March 29 through 31st up in Dallas-Fort Worth at the Harvey Hotel. For information, you can go to... Ooh, I don't have it conveniently located. I bet if you go to the Atheist Alliance site.
Atheist Metroplex has it in Dallas.
Metroplex. Do you know what their
I don't
URL
know their
is?
website offhand, but if you do a Google search, just search for Dallas Atheist Metroplex or something to that effect, and you should be able to find it.
Yeah.
Just go to their homepage.
It might be on their flyer, and I'm not seeing it.
Atheist Metroplex.
Metroplex. Yeah. Right. Heh. Yeah, that's coming up March 29 to 31, and
But if you're going to get a hotel room, you need to do that before March 8th to get the discount.
Good point. And that's next week.
Mark got a website here.
Oh, good.
Great, got that URL? www.metroplexatheists.org. Thank you, Martin.
Metroplex at... Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, metroplexatheists.org. Thank you very much, Martin. In fact, I'll write that down. www.metroplexatheists.org. Okay. And now we have the full information. Let's see. What else we got? Well, I had some actual news. The Massachusetts House has approved mandatory child abuse reporting for the clergy. This is in response to the recent exposure of huge numbers of cases of reports of sexual abuse by priests, by Roman Catholic priests in and around Boston that have been suppressed by the Catholic Church. The Massachusetts State House has approved legislation requiring clergy to report evidence of sexual abuse of children to authorities. The bill's passage comes amidst the biggest child molestation scandal to rock the nation's Roman Catholic Church, a widening case involving the Archdiocese of Boston, the 4th largest archdiocese in the United States. There was another case that has come out in, in Philadelphia. Pennsylvania. As I recall, I don't have the full story, but as I recall, the church there has voluntarily handed a bunch of information about that it had been sitting on about sexual abuse in Boston.
Why were they sitting on
around
it?
Philadelphia?
Why were they sitting on it? Why?
Because that's what churches do. You see, here's the thing. Let me just do a little personal commentary on here, and I've got some inside information. Right, I mentioned this before. My parents are ministers. They're not Catholic priests. They're formerly Methodist, now non-denominational. Well, what's a church all about? It's about putting up this front that being in a church makes you a better person, helps everybody to behave, and makes everything nice. So what is the natural response when there is a scandal? The natural response is to suppress the scandal. There's a scandal going on in my parents' church involving my parents, and they won't talk about it. They're putting on a big show about there's nothing going on, and it's all just a sham. That is how they make their money, by preserving that idea that somehow churches make things better. So it takes exposure like this to let the cat out of the bag. Back to the story. The measure, overwhelmingly approved last Tuesday in a vote by the state's House, extends to members of the clergy the mandatory reporting law that already applied to teachers, social workers, and other professionals in Massachusetts. So they were exempted from this, not anymore. Religious leaders.
Well, they don't have to report stuff that's they got in confession.
Right, they are, but neither do any other people who are covered. No, wait, I read that. Neither do any of the other people already covered by this, like lawyers. Neither do they have to report to the state things that are normally considered confidential.
Oh, okay.
Unless someone is in danger, I suppose. Unless, like,
is there
for
an
example,
exemption for lawyers about that?
I think so. If someone says, I'm going to kill somebody, and they tell their lawyer, I'm going to kill this person,
right,
then they can tell. I mean, to protect the person.
This law, though the existing law is already 30 years old and excluded the priesthood, it no longer does. And this story doesn't mention it, but yeah, it's extended to clergy, not just the Catholics,
right,
which was a wise move in my opinion.
Because now it's anybody who's any church anywhere finds out about a molestation, you must report.
Right. Good for you. Supreme Court rejects appeal on Ten Commandments. This is great news. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected on Monday Indiana's appeal that it should be allowed to erect a limestone monument with the Ten Commandments on the State House lawn in Indianapolis. Without any comment or dissent, the justices let stand a federal appeal court ruling that placing the monument on government property would violate church-state separation under the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. Indiana argued in its appeal that the First Amendment permitted the government display to memorialize the role the commandments have played in development of the rule of law and the American legal system, unquote. The Indiana Civil Liberties Union and other plaintiffs sued, arguing the monument injected specific religious beliefs in the public square. And I'm not going to say it again, but last week I read a quote from Adams or Jefferson, I forget which one, that Jefferson, I think, who specifically denied the claim that our legal system is based on the Ten Commandments, because our legal system is based on pagan legal practices that were in place in Europe before anybody there had ever heard of Jesus. Let's see. City of Milwaukee agrees to remove Ten Commandments monument. This was now this is hanging all over, but this particular case, there was some additional background that I think is very interesting. So stick with me on this. Following years of negotiation with the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a fine group of individuals up there in Milwaukee, I might say, the city of Milwaukee has agreed to avoid a losing lawsuit by returning a Ten Commandments monument to the Fraternal Order of Eagles. This group, the FOE, I love that acronym. Our foes are going to get this Ten Commandments monument back. Most of these Ten Commandments monuments that these cases revolve around were erected in the 1950s by the Fraternal Order of Eagles. Quote, it is significant that the first such Ten Commandments Eagles monument to be placed on public property is now being removed. So this was the very first one, the one in Milwaukee. In deference to the constitutional separation of church and state, said Ann Gaylor, president of the foundation, a national watchdog association based in Madison, Wisconsin. Excuse me, I misspoke before. They're in Madison, which works to keep church and state separate. Continuing the quote, courts around the country are finally acknowledging that the sacred text of one religion does not belong on public property. The First Commandment alone makes it obvious why government may not endorse the Bible edicts. Citizens may worship whatever God they like, as many gods as they like, or none at all. The Decalogue was placed with great fanfare at the Milwaukee Municipal Building, with actor Yul Brynner in attendance, after being donated by Judge E.J. Rumer, chair of the Eagles National Youth Guidance Commission, to Mayor Frank P. Zindler. The biblical monument was presented to Zindler at the International Convention of the Fraternal Order of Eagles in 1955, and apparently was installed at the municipal building in 1957. The presentation kicked off a national campaign by the Eagles. And here's the interesting new thing. They were working with movie director Cecil B. DeMille who was seeking to publicize his biblical epic, the Ten Commandments, by helping to erect the granite Bible monument in as many public locations as possible.
So, go ahead.
Not only is this a violation of church-state separation by being the religious commandments of one particular religion on public property, it was also an advertising campaign for a film. It was a promotional gimmick for the movie The Ten Commandments.
So is this where the Ten Commandment monument here at the Texas State?
The one here on the one of the Capitol building here in Austin, Texas, is all from the foes.
So basically,
all 11 commandments on it.
Yeah, the Ten Commandments monument with the 11 commandments on it.
Exactly.
And I think they've all got that, but that doesn't get a lot of coverage in the press. I think they're all identical.
There's also another town in Wisconsin called La Crosse, and their mayor, John Medinger, I hope I pronounced that right, says he believes the monument is unconstitutional and should be removed. He said, in light of what the Milwaukee and the Supreme Court have done, the handwriting is pretty clear on the wall. I would just soon not waste the taxpayers' money on a lawsuit we couldn't win. He also said, and here's the funny part, it's hard to argue that the Ten Commandments is not a religious monument. It comes from the Bible.
It's not just religious. It comes from the Bible. We got some funny reaction in the chat room to this. Steve Grant is saying, this monument brought to you by Doritos. To which Think Fest Climber responds, I believe in cheeses. That's awesome, guys. Thank you. Wow, there can't be much of a delay in the audio right now. Usually we're a minute or two behind them.
Good.
More on the Ten Commandments. 3 judges ordered Ten Commandments displays taken down. Jasper, Tennessee. 3 judges this week ordered 2 postings of the Ten Commandments removed from the courtroom. On February 20, Circuit Court Judge Thomas Rusty Graham and 2 other judges had the framed copies of the religious codes removed just hours after they were posted, citing violations of state and federal constitutions, court officials said. A resolution was approved by the Marion County Commission 3 months ago to post those commandments. So, good work, guys.
Yay. Oh, and let's forget to mention David Clark's website.
Right. David Clark, who is a member of the Atheist Community of Austin and who had his own effort to remove the Commandments Monument from the lawn of the state capitol here in Austin. That's www.removeth10.com.
Remove the 0.
Right. That's 1010. And I want to mention, this is some stuff I need to have information on. David located another ongoing effort to get the Ten Commandments removed from the Capitol lawn, and as I understand it, he has thrown his support behind that. There may be information about this on his website.
Okay.
I sadly have not gotten around to checking. Godless bishop given BBC Good Friday slot. This was interesting. The BBC has chosen a controversial former bishop, this would be in the Church of England, who has questioned the divinity of Christ to present its flagship religious program on Good Friday. To the dismay of many clerics, the Most Reverend Richard Holloway, who retired 2 years ago as the primus of the Scottish Episcopal Church, okay, not Church of England, unless that's a branch and I just don't understand it, is to contribute his reflection on the crucifixion on Good Friday meditation on BBC One. The cleric, whose former church has fewer than 50,000 members, has often caused outrage through his interpretation of the scriptures and his use of sex, drugs, and homosexuality.
Not rock and roll?
What? Don't views on sex and homosexuality pretty much go together? Couldn't it just be his views on drugs and sex?
I guess.
Last Easter, he compared Peter Tatchell, the homosexual campaigner, to Jesus. That I read a story about that. That guy was basically going around speaking out against gay bashing in the church and himself beat up a lot for his pains. The analogy that this guy drew was, this is somebody who was committed to morals and ethics, in case being, don't be a homophobe. And clearly committed to that cause, and therefore like Jesus. for standing up for what he believed. In an interview last year, the 68-year-old cleric, who was also the Bishop of Edinburgh, said that Jesus was merely an extraordinary man and not the Son of God. The BBC's decision to give him a national pulpit on one of Christianity's most sacred days will particularly anger the Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. George Carey, with whom he has publicly clashed. It will also reignite the row over the appointment last year of Alan Bookbinder, and we did this story on the TV show, Alan Bookbinder as head of religion and ethics at the BBC, the first non-believer to hold that sensitive post. Mr. Bookbinder describes himself as an open-minded agnostic. The Reverend Jeffrey Kirk, the National Secretary of Forward in Faith, the traditionalist umbrella group, yesterday attacked Bishop Holloway's role in the BBC One program and said that his views bordered on atheism. And I think that's a fine thing, that a man whose views at least border on atheism is in a position a position where he can get his viewpoint expressed. So that's a fine thing. Okay. I want to remind everybody listening to our program that if you've enjoyed our show and would like to receive emails reminding you to tune in each week and chat with other listeners between shows, you can join the reminder list by going to groups.yahoo.com/group/atheist_nonprofits radio show.
All one word.
Yeah, non-profits radio, non-profits radio show.
Oh,
I should say non-profits.
Atheist
Underscore non-profits radio show. Once again, groups.yahoo.com/group/atheist_non-profits radio show. And thanks to Wendy Britton, a former ACA member now living up in the fine state of Washington, for volunteering to set that up and moderate it. The chat room that you have a chance to join in on, if you listen to us live as a result of that reminder list, can be found at www.atheistnetwork.com. Atheist Network being the fine, upstanding organization that hosts our program. Okay.
Yay!
Well,
Mr. Sanders would say, woohoo!
I wish y'all could have seen Vic spinning on that one. That was
Yeah. That's just me not talking loud enough, Liz. I don't want to come out across here because my voice doesn't carry, so I have to get into the mic.
So we have at the one of the many things that the Atheist Community of Austin does is we host a discussion list called we have a discussion list for atheists, and then we have another list called the Ask an Atheist, and both of these you can find links to on our website. And recently, a fellow who watched an episode of our public access TV show, The Atheist Experience, took exception to some things that were said and wrote a letter to the Ask an Atheist list. And he describes himself as a Thomist, meaning that he's enamored of the writings of Thomas Aquinas. And he accused the crew of the show of not understanding Aquinas's 5 ways. This is like a set of 5 arguments which together are supposed to establish the existence of God. Are you guys familiar with this thing?
not
Vaguely. That exchange between you and him.
There's the first cause argument, right? Which is basically everything we see got caused, and therefore everything got caused, and therefore you go back and back and back and back and back, and either you got an infinite regress or you have a first cause, and that's God. All right, that's the first cause argument. There's a prime mover argument, which is that
it's essentially their way of saying the cause.
It seems to me, it seems to me. And then there's this wacky one that asserts that things like hotness, right, traits are manifestations of some ultimate thing that Aquinas calls an essence, that like the essence of hotness, that is true for hotness. And in order for things to be able to be hot, they are just manifestations of this essence, of this pure ultimate essence. And
Is this a
Therefore-
Calvin Klein commercial or something?
Calvin Klein's obsession for men. No.
Of man.
And then there is the. I've skipped one. But then Aquinas has his argument from design, right? Our Bishop Paley thing about walking along the beach and finding a watch. That's just a justification for Aquinas' assertion that everything appears to be created, right? Everything appears to be designed. I've dropped one and I forget what it is, but anyway, we're having some back and forth on this, and Martin in the chat room, if he's still there, yeah, there he is, can comment on this too, because we're sort of tag teaming this guy. But it's a hoot. It is a real hoot. Apparently,
Let me ask you. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
but
no, go ahead.
What is this guy's reasoning for being so enamored with Aquinas' writings?
Well, that's interesting, because as I'm interacting with him, one of the most obvious things that's coming out of it is that he rejects all science since Aquinas. Now, whether he already rejected all science since Aquinas, and therefore this stuff made sense to him, or whether he was sort of oblivious to science, became enamored of Aquinas, and therefore rejects all science because it threatens to undermine Aquinas' claims, is unclear. I don't know. But I mean, in general, the reason why religious people are so excited about what Aquinas said back in the Middle Ages is because they think that it justifies their beliefs. But the first line I went into with him was, well, even if Aquinas' arguments established that there had to be a thing we can call a first cause, or a thing that we can call a prime mover, or these essences, or even intelligent design. Each of those things, even if those arguments are true, exist independently of each other. They do not. There's nothing about them which makes them all have to appear in one being. And even if they did have to all appear in any one being, there's nothing about them that would make that being be the Christian God, because the Christian God has all kinds of other characteristics that these things don't even begin to hint at, like having a mind, right? Having opinions about stuff, being Jesus' dad. All those things are completely not established. The guys, it's and I made an analogy in my argument with him.
Yeah, the apples one.
Yeah,
right
that
here.
we do not prove the existence of apples by establishing that there are such essences as sweetness and crunchiness and seed-bearingness, and then assert that there are apples that are these fruits that look a certain way, right, and are of a certain size and can be found in certain climates, right? And then, since there is, and they have among their traits sweetness, crunchiness, and seed-bearing, redness, right? The existence of those traits is not what establishes the existence of apples. You establish the existence of apples by producing a frickin' apple, right? Or if you don't know about a thing called apples, you could find a brand new fruit, check out what its characteristics are, the ones you could actually perceive, and then you could make up a name for that, like apple. But then you wouldn't imagine all those other characteristics.
I think we have a branch of science that deals with this. It's called botany, right?
Yeah, but so he responded to my analogy by saying, "Oh, you're changing the argument, and that's a straw man." So in my latest response to him, I've just taken out apples, put in gods, taken out redness and crunchiness and seed bearing, and put in for cause and prime movingness and all those other things. It just completely doesn't work. And another thing I'm getting into with him now is that in Aquinas' time, it did appear that everything had to be caused. But quantum physics is showing us that uncaused stuff happens. It just does, right? Quantum events are not the result of, they're not the mechanistic, next effect of a previous cause. They just happen. And And so the entire argument falls down. Without the necessity of things having to be caused, you simply cannot trace everything back to an original cause. You can trace things back as far as quantum events. You can do that. And in fact, quantum events, and then another tack I've taken with them in my latest response, is quantum events fit Aquinas' 5 ways better than God's do. Because quantum events are uncaused. They are unmoved. Oh, unmovers. Wait a minute. No, that's the prime mover thing. I forget what the third one is. That's right. Necessary entities. The argument of necessity, that certain things have to exist. It appears that there have to be quantum events in order for stuff to happen. Those 3 things all fit quantum events right just fine without quantum events having additional characteristics that come alongside for free, like God does. And this guy has already pretty much conceded that the argument from design doesn't make any sense. And I'm simply rejecting his claim about these essences because that makes no sense at all. And there's every single time that I point out, you call beauty an essence, but a thing that has an essence, but I'm an artist and I can tell you beauty is subjective. That, where beauty comes from is from us having opinions about stuff, to which he responds, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Individual cases like that don't matter. Just come up with your own essences and it works just fine. No, dude, you have to provide at least one essence, one example of a thing that's got an essence that I can agree to. Otherwise, that just fails. So it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes. I see that Martin has been reacting on the list. Please comment while I read over my shoulder here at what Martin is saying.
Well, I have a hard time understanding why anybody would take what Aquinas said literally. I mean, for one thing, he was writing in a time before there were a lot of scientific advances, and I mean, it's right. I don't understand why someone would still be clinging to those ideas.
You know what his response was when he brought up science? He said, "You're not saying that science claims absolute knowledge, are you?" And I said, "No. All that I'm saying is that modern science, knows more than Aquinas did, and that's all it takes." And his response to that was, "Be careful, you seem to be saying that science claims absolute knowledge." It's like, dude, man, is that all you got?
Yeah.
And he said this crazy thing about, Aquinas only asserts that things exist and move, and that's certainly firmer ground than any of modern science, as if modern science has somehow wandered away from those basic observations. No, science has not wandered away from those basic observations. Science has piled more observations on top of those ones.
And never is science satisfied to say this is the answer to everything. I mean, if for some reason there is some all-encompassing theory, we have yet to discover it, but that doesn't mean we're going to quit trying to look for it.
Yeah, Martin is commenting. He's assuming what he wishes to prove and just finds the evidence that fits. That's exactly right. It's like if I wanted to let's take a made-up fruit. I want to prove the existence of bongo fruits, and I say bongo fruits are yellow, and they have a rind, and they are soft, right? They got the essences of rindedness and yellowness and softness. And all I got to do is I can find any fruit that is yellow and soft and has a rind.
Banana.
Yeah, and I can say, well, that's just another word for bongo fruit. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to add on this. And they make you immortal. Oh. You see? And I can find a banana and say, that's just another word for bongo fruit. And they do make you immortal, but, only if you believe strong enough.
Thanks to Charles, too, for those dates of Thomas Aquinas' life.
Oh, yeah.
1225.
That is the Middle Ages, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Right? Yeah.
1225.
A lot has happened then.
Yeah, most of it in the last 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And Martin also pointed out, I've pointed out to the guy several times that religions are in the business of claiming absolute knowledge.
That's right, and I'm really startled whenever I encounter a Christian who attacks science by saying science, by either saying science is bad because it can't provide, or is less powerful than religion because it can't provide absolute knowledge, or when they say it's bad for science to pretend to claim absolute knowledge. I mean, pick one. Either absolute knowledge is possible or it isn't. If it is possible, then, the thing that can show that its knowledge actually works is the thing that it has the better claim to absolute knowledge. And if absolute knowledge is not possible, what are you doing being a Christian? Right?
Or any religion.
What does that say about your God, who's supposed to know everything? I mean, it's either possible or not possible.
Yeah.
And if it's possible that you've got this omnipotent God, you would think that he would find a better way to express his existence other than manifestations in tree stumps and ice cream.
And tortillas.
And tortillas and such. Something unambiguous can be interpreted in the same way by anybody who saw it. Mm-hmm. And it never happens. You get tortillas and tree stumps.
You want to go into this whole faith thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they you ask how come it's so obscure, and they'll say, well, because God has to give you faith. God has to require you to have faith.
And God doesn't have to explain his plan to us.
Yeah, God doesn't have to explain his, I'm saying it wrong. You're right. God, that's one thing. God doesn't have to explain his plan to us because he's in charge and he just gets to be the boss automatically. I had to remind this guy in the email debate that, I just can't accept his, that was a different guy. Different guy in a different email debate, that I can't accept the assertion that God is king and therefore deserves these rights because I'm in America. We don't have kings here. But
something that the church in America, or churches in America, don't seem to understand.
Yeah. But the free will thing is, well, if God didn't give us the freedom to choose to not believe, then we wouldn't have free will and we'd just be automatons. Never mind the fact that God's omniscience and the fact that he created the universe knowing exactly what we would do throughout our entire lives and what everybody would ever do forever automatically makes us automatons. Never mind that. But my friend Denis, who is a frequent poster to the alt-atheism news group, interestingly hit on a very insightful realization, right? What the hell do you call Jesus? Jesus is a man, right? Okay, maybe he's God too, but he's clearly a being created by God who does not ever sin, right? Does not ever make the wrong decisions. Never does anything wrong. Now, Christians have to either admit that Jesus was nothing but an automaton, or they got to admit that Jesus is proof concept of the idea that God could have created us with free will and the capacity to do everything right. See, it does not work to claim that God has to be ambiguous. God wasn't ambiguous to Jesus, was he?
I don't think so.
It wouldn't have been supposed to have conversations.
So this whole defense of free will, the defense of God's ambiguity, because it's necessary to justify free will, is nonsense. It's complete and utter nonsense. Clearly, their belief system enables their God to create beings with free will who always choose the right thing. It's called Jesus.
Oh man.
Yes, Vic.
Nothing. I'm not even going to say.
We're calling him Victor now.
Yeah, that's right.
In fact, I update that in my notes.
Update that Jesus is now be referred to as Vic.
Victor Farrow?
Yes.
Okay. Scribble, scribble, scribble.
You don't have to use the word Victor. I do go by the word Vic.
You do?
Yes.
You still respond to it.
I respond to Vic. I'm not changing it because the only reason is that over communication devices and sometimes in public, if I say I'm Vic, I usually get Dick, Rick, or Nick. No one ever seems to be able to hear the letter V. So I've taken to introducing myself as Victor first and then referring to myself as Vic after.
Oh, I see.
That way they get a clue.
Okay.
All right.
I don't understand what it is about Vic that people can't hear. And I don't understand about, apparently I've never met a Vic that spells his name with a K. But if you tell someone your name is Vic, they will invariably write V-I-C.
Huh. Like Vic's cough drops.
There are Vics in existence that use a K in their name. None.
That's last name. Vic's cough drops are not named
Vic
after
is a name, but Vic, the abbreviation of the word Victor, is V-I-C.
Uh-huh.
You could start,
there's the cause of the problem, though, the confusion.
You could do more of the Spanish pronunciation, like Victor.
Well, that would be Vic. Because apparently in Spanish, a B sounds more like
a soft B.
Soft B. So it's big.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, I got off topic real fast.
That's right. Actually, more contributions from Martin Webb, who's writing a blue streak in the chat room right now.
Oh, no.
If there's free will in heaven, then it seems you can have a situation where free will exists, yet no one chooses evil. Why didn't God just make life on Earth like that? Good point. Good point.
Well, maybe he did in a way, because we have all of these horrible, atrocious things that happen in the world every day, most of which we don't even know about. But I just think, that's the thing that gets me, is especially after September 11th, but of course even before then, I really question as to why anybody would believe in a God, particularly after September 11th. It just doesn't, what kind of God would allow something like that to happen? Of course, I don't believe there's a God, so that's why I say, it's pretty understandable that could happen. Because people did that, not God.
I accidentally mentioned another email debate that I'm involved in right now. This is with a guy who is a fan of my artwork and my game designs, who stumbled across my website looking for the games and accidentally encountered some atheist stuff, which I put there for people to find. But he took exception, as several of my fans have done, and wrote me this very, very hostile letter. And he says, well, you're just interpreting the Old Testament, what God does in the Old Testament, from your human perspective. And you don't understand.
Like I have any other choice.
Well, and he admits that on the subject of the value of human life, he says, well, of course we value human life because that is the level that we are at. But human life has no value to God. It's
that's nice.
Wow.
And you're okay with that.
You're okay with that. Not only are you okay with that.
You worship this.
That's right. You're praising the guy who does not value your life.
And my other thing I have to stump Christians on, because this really, their chins drop, is that you talk about Jesus giving himself on the cross as a sacrifice for all human sin.
Yeah.
All right, now if he's in touch with God, and he knows, or even in some Christian sects he is God, and he knows that, this is not really a permanent thing. He's just going to go up there and pretend to die and then wake up and go back and be in Happy Land.
Right.
Where's the frickin' sacrifice? What sacrifice? He hasn't sacrificed crap. All right?
Worse yet. What? Okay. How is that supposed? We didn't just talk about this already. Stop me if I'm going over. Oh, Russell's in the chat room. Hi, Russell, our producer, Russell Glasser. Stop me if I'm getting into territory we've covered recently, but again, this is some stuff my friend Denis is coming up. He's getting really insightful, and I'm impressed by this. He was discussing with a Christian this whole premise that Jesus dies on the cross to pay for our sins, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Everybody's sins, or just the sins of Christians?
You're born tainted with original sin.
Yeah, but if my sins are paid for, I don't need to be a Christian. So clearly, he hasn't paid for everybody's sins. He's only paying for the sins of Christians. Okay. Now, what does that tell you? What it tells you is, if you choose to become a Christian, you're piling more pain on Jesus. Right? Right. The pain is the price for letting you off for your sins. And by becoming a Christian, you're fobbing off the responsibility for eternal torment from yourself to Jesus. Right? You are asleep, standing in a hail of bullets, and jump behind Jesus take the gunfire for you.
I think a lot of Christians would argue against that. They might say, well, if someone wants to sin, then they take that upon themselves. Jesus won't necessarily stop that bullet, so to speak.
But it's the sins you've already committed, right? Or the sin you're already responsible for because of Adam and Eve, which is a whole separate question,
Well,
right?
yeah.
But that much, at least, as soon as you become a Christian, you're saying, okay, Jesus' sacrifice, now the amount of pain Jesus suffered, now has to also include mine, right? The amount of pain it takes to keep me out of hell. You're just piling more pain on Jesus. So who's being the nicest to Jesus? Why, atheists, of course. All non-Christians are being the nicest to Jesus, saying, no thanks, we'll continue to bear whatever penalty comes from our sins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then there's that concept of sin itself, which I have major problems with.
Yeah, well, certainly.
Because there's unethical behavior or bad behavior, but sin is a whole other concept.
Right.
It's not just bad behavior that constitutes sin. Non-belief constitutes sin.
Yeah.
Right. And in the biblical view, sin is basically doing whatever God tells you not to, which is why eating the forbidden fruit was a sin, even though there was no 10 Commandments yet. God had told them not to.
Mm-hmm. Never mind that God created them. I just think,
right. Never mind that God created them. Never mind that He knew they were going to. Right. He knew Eve was going to take the apple. He knew she was going to offer one to Adam, and he was going to eat it. And knowing all that, He went ahead and created it all, and then penalized them. And not just them,
but everybody.
The ultimate guilt trip.
Yeah. How on earth can anybody in America think that it could possibly be fair for everybody to be considered guilty of the supposed sins committed by their supposed ancestors? We don't if my grandfather steals $1 million, right, and then dies, and they're looking around for somebody to punish, they do not make it my fault. I do not get punished for what he did unless I was somewhat culpable. I mean, if I helped him load his truck with the tools that were going to open up the vault, right, then our law says I got some involvement. If I wasn't even freaking born yet, it's not my affair. And yet that's the fundamental. That is the fundamental basis of the Judeo-Christian belief system. We are all guilty of this crime that none of us had any part in. Mm-hmm. That's just horrible.
It is.
Tainted with the original sin.
And it's because the Bible was written by people. I mean, this is no great mystery. I mean, this is just a way to keep people in line so they won't, go against what other people feel is sinful. And if everybody follows this one doctrine, then that makes the group as a whole stronger. It really has nothing to do with you need to not commit adultery. It has to do with, keeping control over people's lives for millennia.
And even in the sense that is okay, right? The idea that we want to have a culture with a shared set of behavioral rules so that however it is we're interacting, it's moderated somehow, right? That's reasonable. And I'm seeing more and more interest in our culture in general from people casting around trying to find a really good set of guidelines.
Yeah.
Well, they're looking for rules. I wish they'd start looking for principles.
Yeah,
but they're looking for rules of behavior to try to deal with exactly that. We get the Christians screaming that, Columbine shooting proves that we have this moral crisis in our country.
No.
But I agree. We have a moral crisis.
But it's not because of religion.
It is. It is because of a lack of religion. But in this sense only, okay, it's because of lack of religion in the sense that our culture is permeated with the assumption that all of our rules of behavior come from Christianity. And as people become more educated and interest in Christianity and the authority of Christianity wanes, we are left with a set of rules of behavior that are based on Christianity, and people understandably are questioning that. Right? If Christianity could prove that God and Jesus and all of it was true, we'd have no problem. I'd sign up. Mm-hmm. But that can't be the basis of our rules of behavior. What we really need to be doing, even more than just beating up on Christianity or being such a pain in the ass, what we really need to be doing is we really need to be formulating a new basis for whatever rules of behavior we're going to have that we try to get everybody to
But I thought
go
we
along
don't
with.
want rules of behavior.
But you know what I mean.
Moral guidelines.
Right,
or
right. Principles.
ethical guidelines.
Ethical principles.
Yeah.
That's a good way of
Okay.
saying it. And there are, we mentioned the Freedom from Religion Foundation before. There is a really good children's book from the Freedom from Religion Foundation called Maybe Right, Maybe Wrong by Dan Parker, which discusses this in very simple ways that kids can understand, and I think it's incredibly insightful stuff, right? I think, as I recall, he uses an excellent example of euthanasia for your pets, right? Killing is one principle says it is bad to kill. Well, another principle says it is bad to cause people to suffer or to allow suffering to continue, right? When you operate from a basis of ethical principles, what happens inevitably is you get situations where you have principles in conflict. And that is called making a tough ethical decision, right? Those are called tragedies, where there's no really happy way out, but it happens. And that is right and proper, and it is necessary for any set of ethical principles to have that. The only way to avoid that is to have rules. And I've gotten into arguments with objectivists over that specific point, saying, no, objectively, one of those two choices, either allow your puppy to keep living but be in horrible pain, or kill your puppy immediately. One of those two is objectively better. And that is the pitfall we're facing, right? We're facing the risk that we could get Christianity replaced by some other horrible approach to behavior, to ethics, that tries to assert absolutes. And that is what we have to watch out for while we're casting up for what are our ethical principles going to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the biggest problem I have with religion is that it tells people what to do. That's essentially its function, is to, I mean, some other, some Christians or some other, religious folks might argue, they might say, well, religion just gives me a moral guidepost. It's not like I necessarily take the Bible literally, But essentially that's what religion's main function is to tell people this is how you need to live your life.
Right.
And
this is absolutely right. That is absolutely wrong.
Right. You must believe in God, and you must believe that Jesus is your Savior.
Right.
It doesn't leave room for debate or discourse or discussion. And that's what I have a problem with when we're talking about any religion, is that they all share that basic premise.
But that is the reason for their for the religious objection to what they call situational ethics, right? It seems to me, if you're in a situation and if something is happening and you do not understand the situation, yet you apply a penalty to somebody because there is a rule that says what just happened is wrong always. Then you're not being ethical, right? You're,
like the commandments,
right?
I mean, that's program.
Yeah, then you don't care why it's wrong or if it's really wrong. You are just applying a rule. You're a robot,
Right.
Or so it seems to me that knowing what the situation is and caring what the situation is before you pass judgment is absolutely required. You can't be moral.
Right.
If you don't know what the situation is, you can't be moral. You can't make a moral judgment. And if you don't care what the situation is, then you're not moral.
That's a very insightful distinction. It really is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's Dennis was saying, I take it.
No, that's mine.
Oh, that's
Dennis was saying anything about atheists are nicer to Jesus because we don't lump our sins on him. Right? We don't make him suffer.
We don't make him.
And he got into arguments. There were Christians that denied that and said, no, Jesus, in fact, took on all the pain of all of our sins. I paid for them all. And all that we do when we decide to be Christians is we get to collect on his sacrifice.
Because
and that's special.
And Denis is going, that's horrible. You know, why is Jesus undergoing all that unnecessary suffering for those of us who do not intend to collect? Right? That's just incredibly bad planning and unnecessary suffering.
Well, you know, it's hard to make sense out of what believers think, because sometimes it changes in the middle of their thoughts.
But it's fun. I mean, for me, that is the funnest part of critiquing religion, is taking the implications and running with them. You know, I love that because you get implications that are clearly not what they thought. You know?
I mean, in common situations, though, if you bring up these same objections, more often than not, what you'll get is the Christians shutting down and not wanting to have a discussion any further. Yeah. Is they don't like having their beliefs challenged. They don't challenge them themselves, and they don't like anybody else to do it.
Because what they're looking for is I mentioned that there's a lot of interest in our society right now to find guidance as to what to do and what not to do. And most people approach that from the standpoint of, well, the guidance is going to be absolute. Right? That's what they want. The people don't. It's hard work. Making difficult ethical choices is hard work, and it's not fun. It's painful. It's difficult, right? We can and we get results that we can possibly be happy with either way, right? Like my poor suffering puppy dog is dead, and I don't have it anymore. I can't even pet his furrowed brow while he's suffering in pain, or my puppy dog is there, and I'm petting his brow while he's suffering in pain, but he's suffering in pain. Neither one of those outcomes is good. Mm-hmm. And it's that kind of thing. People want a solution to problems like that lets them off the hook completely.
Yeah, without having to think about it. I just do this. This happens. Do this.
Yeah.
What they want is a what they call a flow chart.
Right.
I want a flow chart. If this happens, go here, here. If this happens, go here, here. If this happens, go here, here.
Right. And whatever decision that they are told to take, they want to be able to say, well, I had to euthanize my dog. That is what my belief system told me that I must do. Mm-hmm. Right. Or what they do not want is they do not want to bear the personal responsibility. Well, personal responsibility is a good thing. You know, it's called maturity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's called being an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading a book now called Practical Ethics, Peter Singer.
Yeah, that's one that's on my list I want to read.
He's dealing with the euthanasia question on the human level.
Right.
There's no justification for the sanctity of human life as opposed to non-human life, animals, or such. And what we'll do for an animal that's suffering horribly, we put it out. All right, and we wouldn't think about that. Good choice. But you try to apply that choice to a human, and you just unleash a firestorm of...
I'm afraid I'm probably going to disagree with him about that. I don't think it's that clear. I don't think that it is clear that it is definitely good to euthanize animals that are inane. I don't think it is clear, because if it was clear, people would be able to do it and not be sad.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you misunderstood me. That's not what he was talking about. Okay. What he's talking about is there's.
Then we're willing to do it. We're certainly willing to do it, and we make it
because of the. And I'm not. It's a good thing to apply the least amount of suffering. Okay, and if your animal
when it's your animal, and we do it differently as people.
Yeah, we take a different approach. We have this kind of countered approach when it comes to humans, whereas you can deny antibiotics to a child born with no brain that catches pneumonia, so that you can allow that child who will have a horrible, useless life to just die. Mm-hmm. But you can't euthanize that child. It could take 3 weeks for him to die from the pneumonia. But euthanizing him would be horrible because you're killing human life, innocent human life.
Right.
And so what's so special about human life that we wouldn't euthanize? You know, if we agree that there are conditions in which life is not living, such as being born without a brain, then what really is the difference between allowing a child to die from an infection by not giving it treatment, or just going ahead and terminating from the get-go?
I like this. We are now in the debate part of the show because I kind of disagree in fundamental ways about some of these things. Do not agree that that we must necessarily apply the same principles to humans and animals. I mean, I certainly am in favor of ethical treatment of animals, but I'm mostly in favor of ethical treatment for animals because of the link between animal abuse and abuse of humans, right? That most serial killers start out by killing animals, torturing and killing animals, right? It desensitizes them, and it seems to me that we want to discourage abuse of animals for our own sake.
Because antisocial behavior in general should have a link.
Yeah. But the animals are simply not in a position to have say.
Right.
So our say, it seems to me, has to be from the perspective of us as humans. But I can see perfectly valid reasons to extend our concern for ourselves to cover treatment of animals because of what it resents, because of what it tends to lead to.
Well, I mean, I'm no animal rights person. I eat critters, and I enjoy critters.
So on the euthanasia, I have to get to the second. On the euthanasia issue, I am a supporter of the freedom of people to the right to die issues, right?
Yes.
I support that for completely different reasons. Because I'm a transhumanist, and what I am hoping to be able to do at some point, if necessary, is have my body frozen and have myself resuscitated later. And one of the things about that right now is you can't get yourself frozen until you're dead. Yeah. And if what's killing you is a degenerative neurological disorder, then you won't be dead until there's nothing left of your brain to preserve, right? There's no way your personality will survive that.
No.
Yeah.
If you're frozen, there can be ice damage. Your brain can have huge cracks through it because it's a solid chunk of ice.
Yeah.
Those kinds of crude that kind of crude damage can theoretically be repaired. Right? Because you can look at it and say, well, here's a neuron. It's all broken up into a zillion pieces by ice crystals, but we know there was a neuron there, right? We can put a neuron there. Or if there's a big crack through your frozen brain, it's like, well, duh, put it back together. But if the neurons that held the information about your personality are simply dead and, been carried off by your blood system as rubbish, they're just not there. There's no information for reconstructing your personality. So one of the main reasons that I'm concerned about right to die issues is because people to be able to decide for themselves when they want to shut down their own biological functions for any reason, not even just because they're in a horrible amount of pain.
Right. If you decide that you no longer wish to live, it should be your choice.
It seems to me, yeah.
But we live in a culture where religion permeates, and religion says suicide is wrong. You go to hell for that.
I can even understand reluctance to tolerate suicide. Did you have a suicide story?
Yes.
Why don't we do that suicide story right now? And while you're looking for it, I'm going to finish my point.
I've got it right here.
I can understand reluctance to tolerate suicide just from, and I'm not saying this justifies outlawing it, but I can understand a reluctance in our society because it tends to be interpreted as a failure of our culture. And we don't like to be faced with the idea, we failed this person, right?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Stay alive a while. We'll make things better, right? And that, so there is guilt that people in general feel when they're part of a big organization called our culture, and individual members want to leave. I can understand that motivation, even separate from religion. Do your story.
Well, tied into religion, this is a story out of Greece, particularly Nicosia. The Greek Orthodox Church in Cyprus said Thursday it would not bury people taking their own lives, declaring suicides, quote-unquote, the greatest sin. Further, they said it is the ultimate sin which shows disrespect to the will of God. Now, how they figure this out, I don't know. But,
so what?
I know.
So what? What kind of disrespect are you showing to that individual by refusing to give them the same ceremony in respect of their remains that you give everybody else?
Right.
So what? They dissed God, so you're going to treat the remains like crap.
Yep, basically.
What is that?
The church condemns suicide and has banned church burials for those who take their lives, said a spokesman for the Holy Synod, the church ruling body. Previously, the church, a powerful institution with business interests ranging from real estate to industry and banking, had frowned on suicides, but there was not an outright ban. The church said it would only make allowances for people who were mentally disturbed with a medical certificate to prove it. Most parish priests now turn a blind eye to the circumstances of a death to perform a funeral service. This church ruling changes that. And again, this is the Greek Orthodox Church in Cyprus that made this ruling. So it's quite disheartening.
Wow. I see that we have a heated Andrea Yates debate going on in the chat room right now. I can see how that is related to what we're talking about. Why don't you do your story?
Okay. This is from the Associated Press out of Houston, where the trial is going on for Andrea Yates, the woman accused of, and it seems pretty clear, of drowning her 5 children in the family's bathtub. 3 weeks after she drowned her children, Andrea Yates told a psychiatrist that she was failing as a mother and believed she had to kill the children to keep them from going to hell. She said, Andrea Yates said to her psychiatrist, allegedly Philip Resnick, told this to him, these were their innocent years. God would take them up.
Can I just say one horrible thing right here? That is the most sane thing I have ever heard a Christian say. In this sense, if you really believe that there is this magical happy land called heaven, and if you really believe that human beings are sinless when they are babies, and destined to sin later, there is no clear certainty that they are gonna go to heaven once they've started their sinning. The most rational thing to do, given those beliefs, is to kill them. It constantly astonishes me that Christians don't see this obvious implication of their belief system. That is what would make sense. The only thing that stops them is because they think that their religion says, and I don't even know if it says in the Bible that, I guess we're not talking suicide now, we're talking murder. The only thing that stops them is they've got a rule that says it's always bad to kill no matter what, except that they set that rule aside when it comes to wars and things, or execution. But it's horrible that is what the implication is.
It is.
I would never sign up a belief system that had that implication, but that is what the implication is. Don't tell me this woman is insane because of that. Because that is, it seems to me, she understands what the implications of her belief system are.
Well, but again, you've got to put it in the context of having, psychotic behavior.
Yeah, she may well be insane,
Right.
but that is not an expression of insanity. That is an expression of a rational understanding of the implications of her belief system.
True enough, I suppose. But again, I don't think anybody would ever say that was a justification.
No, certainly not.
And
I'd say it's a justification for saying that the belief system is horrible and we shouldn't have it.
Yeah, Yates said she believed that if she killed her children, the state would execute her. Satan would be eliminated from the world and the children would be saved.
Wow.
So, yeah. Resnick, that's the psychiatrist, said Yates began having delusions in 1999 following Luke's birth. That was her oldest child, I believe, and attempted suicide twice that year. The voices and delusions again grew intense after Mary's birth. That was her daughter, her 6-month-old, in November 2000.
Now, voices and delusions, that counts as insanity. Unfortunately, hearing voices and having delusions is also part and parcel with the entire the entire type of thing we call religion.
Yeah, and we've had, I mean, there, at the Rumrich debate, Philip brought up the point that, he asked Professor Rumrich if religion is a psychosis. Could it be that religion could be considered a psychosis? And I don't know that I would take it that far, but certainly Andrea Yates, who has been diagnosed with possible schizophrenia and and psychotic postpartum depression, in her case, she certainly, has been diagnosed psychotic. But again, how can you explain people, Christians, let's say, who speak in tongues and hear voices and say that God's talked to them? Those people may not have been determined by a psychiatrist to be insane, but that kind of behavior, you wonder, why is it that we don't look at that kind of behavior and say that's insane?
It seems like there's unstated, unwritten standard, which basically says it's if you claim to have God talking to you, that's good. Up until you do something that's so horrible that we can't bend our views far enough to tolerate it. And we have completed our hour and a half.
Plus about a minute.
Huh?
Plus about a minute.
Plus about a minute. I have had an awfully good time on this particular show. And I want to thank everybody in the chat room for joining in with us and for your contributions to the discussion. And everybody out there who's listening to our show, either live or taped, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Remember, we'll be live every Saturday from 2 o'clock to 3:30 Central Time. And you can also hear past episodes of our show on as downloads. You can go to atheistnetwork.com and see listen to the very previous show, or you can go to atheistcommunity.org, www.atheist-community.org, and listen to any of our back episodes.
Or you can order the CD.
Or you can order the CD by emailing.
With the audio portion of the show as well as the TV show.
And also special stuff for that email, atheist@mac.com for info. Those CDs, each CD has a month worth of stuff, a month worth of 2 different shows plus bonuses for $5. It's an extraordinary deal.
Yes.
So thank you once again, everybody. Say goodbye, folks.
Bye.
And we will talk to you again next week. Bye.